Whiscash gets rocked by the Moonblast and out comes Moltres. Moltres looks for the Sucker Punch farm down but unable to get it before the Blizzards reach. Does the opponent respect the damage? Welcome back to the channel. In my most recent upload, I posted a strong, powerful climbing team which put my elo back in a respectable range, which meant I could do what I love doing best, post some very spicy triple shadow content. Today's featured Pokemon cost me a whopping 700,000 Stardust to power up. It's maxed out all the way at level 50, and that is Shadow Whiscash. Whiscash is a Pokemon that I like to call anti-meta. Even maxed out all the way at level 50, with my IVs being a 15, 15, 12, it only reaches 2,333 CP. Due to its lack of stat product, in type neutral matchups this thing is going to struggle. However, it's anti-meta because it's got play into so many top meta threats. Bellibolt is absolutely everywhere. That stupid annoying thing was on like 50% of teams I played in my previous upload. Poison types are so common on the save switch. On paper at least, Whiscash should beat stuff like Tentacruel, Galarian Weezing, and of course the ever common Drapion. Daddy Cash in its heyday was so good because Scald had a 50% chance to lower the opponent's attack. Nowadays it's been nerfed. You've only got a 30% chance. We're not even going to bother running Scald. Instead, opt in for the Hail Mary Blizzard. Of course, as it's going to be quite weak type neutrally, I need something to bait out Daddy Cash's hardest counters, so we're going to be tasking Swampert in that role, running Sludge for coverage into grass types. Running double Mod Boy, of course, we need a very hard check for grass types in the lead, so we're using level 51 maxed out Pidgeot that is equipped as my best buddy. This intro, as always, has gone on for far too long, so without any further ado, let's get into the battles. For complete transparency, my first set went horrendous. We didn't see any of the targets I was looking for, and I went 0-5. And in the first battle of the upload, we are seeing Zygarde, and I am already super frustrated. I am going to invest the protection on the crunch, and then I should go for 2 Gust and then fire off my charge move. The reason for that is firstly, it's optimal timing, only giving the opponent 1 free turn, and secondly, if I would have done that, the Dragon Tail damage would have already registered before I harshed it out my own defense. I make the pivot into Swampert, resetting that defense debuff. The opponent full send the outrage, rocking Swampert deep into the red health range. Swampert gonna return fire with the Hydro Cannon. The first one gets the opponent into the red health range. The opponent looks for the Dragon Tail farm down, unable to get it before the Hydro Cannon's reached. The opponent then sends out Bellibolt. Thinking with the ground type out the way, it is safe, have a trainer. Guess what, buddy? We've not got 1 ground type, we've got 2. Daddy Cash hits the field of play. We go straight for the Mud Bomb, looking to get it off before the opponent potentially buff up their defense. The opponent continues to stay in, which has me kind of puzzled, to be honest. They farm to a Zap Cannon. I am going to respect it, thinking whatever's in the back might be weak to a Mud Boy. They actually got Gastrodon, so I'm not entirely sure why they didn't pivot out. I bank a bucket of energy and send back out the bird. We've actually got a Blizzard bank, so here I think we'll win con. It's quite simple. YOLO the Brave Bird, look to force the final Protect Shield or knock them out. If they shield, we can just fire off the Blizzard. The opponent doesn't respect the Brave Bird. They get 1 shot. Whiscash with a whole bucket of energy. We actually no-bubble this Mud Bomb. Just a little bit of bad manners. I'm super frustrated. We Mud Shot farm down and take that game. Heading into the next battle, we see the Poison type in the lead position. I'm going to throw 2 Gust, then make the pivot into Swampert. The opponent stays in, looking for some chipping action. I'm not going to shield this up. The opponent just set off the Aqua Tail, which is more than fine for me. The opponent then sends out Florges. Whilst Florges isn't a grass type, they do have access to Trailblaze, so nice to bait it out so Daddy Cash doesn't have to see it. I'd love to realign my Pokemon, but flipping switch here isn't possible. They can tank a charge move, but even a non-boosted Trailblaze knocks me out. So I invest Protect Shield, it just continues to get worse and worse over time as they continue to ramp up their damage. I send up Pidgeot, Pidgeot forced to dump energy before potentially tanking a boosted Moonblast. Featherdarts picks up the knockout, we spam the switch into Daddy Cash and out comes Drifblim. This looks awful. We've got 1 win con and that is full sending. Does the opponent respect the damage? They do not. Blizzard picks up that 1-hit KO and we take that game. Get that silly balloon off my screen. Heading into the next battle, finally we see a great lead, although a problematic save switch. Potentially I could have stayed in with Pidgeot, fired off a Brave Bird to do some decent damage, or even went for a very horny debuff with the Featherdarts, meaning Swampert could shore up this mid-game matchup. The reason I didn't opt for that play is I don't want to heavily misalign the switch timers, as if Jellicent gets a huge energy lead, even best buddy boost at level 51, Pidgeot is very glassy and doesn't tank surfs particularly well. You can see heartbreakingly back-to-back Hydro Cannons don't knock out Corviknight. I could have invested a Protect Shield, then Mudshot farm down. However, that would leave Whiscash down a Protect Shield versus whatever's in the back. Unless it's a Bellibolt, down a Protect Shield, Daddy Cash not going to be particularly good into their third. So with that in mind, what I actually did was concede switch advantage, send out Daddy Cash and get an energy lead. When Jellicent re-entered the arena, we made the pivot into Pidgeot and out comes Zygarde. The reason I Feather Dance there is firstly a Brave Bird won't be lethal and hoping double debuff we can survive an Outrage. Whilst we can survive an Outrage, my god, even at -2 that did far too much damage. Pidgeot, where is your bulk? I think in hindsight I probably should have respected the Outrage. But at -2, from such a defense weighted Pokemon like Zygarde, who wants to invest a Protect Shield? We have got a huge amount of energy on Whiscash, so potentially this is still a win. The question becomes, are two neutral Shadow Mud Bombs that are going to knock out Jellicent? We was able to tank the first Surf as well, recognising the opponent's very unlikely to full send a Shadow Ball. The opponent here gives me a free Mud Shot as well, so we're getting off as much fast with pressure as we physically can. Me, unlike my opponent, is going to commit to good timing. Whiscash going to invest a Protect Shield, one Mud Shot and the first Mud Bomb, and then one Mud Shot and the next Mud Bomb. But is it going to be enough? The first one doesn't quite do 50% of the remaining HP, meaning this next one isn't going to knock out. And Wish Daddy Cash simply doesn't have the stat product, and this game is going to end in defeat. GG's to that opponent. Heading into the next battle. Well, that is a beautiful lead. The opponent says no thank you, save switch into Feraligatr. Unfortunately for me, my best Feraligatr answer is on the battlefield. I'm going to invest a Protect Shield, blocking up the Hydro Cannon, which probably means I'm going to throw a Feather Dance. Mr. Opponent, you're right. I am going to Feather Dance because I am oh so horny for that debuff. Feather Dance is definitely the most annoying debuff move of them all. It actually puts a 2-stage debuff on their attack. So we pivot into Whiscash, and it looks like after that double debuff, despite us being Shadow and Shadow Chrome, we can tank back-to-back Hydro Cannons, and we should be able to Mudshot farm down, leaving minimal farm for whatever comes out and a whole heap of energy. The opponent sends out Moltres, and we're running Blizzard. The question is, does the opponent respect the damage? Oh, what a spoil sport. We have managed to force the opponent all shields down, and we have the alignment we want. We're going to send out Swampert, race to that Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon going to do a very solid dent, and the opponent does need to full send a Brave Bird to knock me out. We're going to save the final Protect Shield for Pidgeot. The opponent settle for the Fly. Fly simply doesn't cut it. Out comes Primeape, and I see my win con. Throw this Hydro Cannon, pivot into my own bird, and look to get an energy lead. I'm not actually sure what's the hardest hitting move left in the game. Is it a close combat from Primeape or a Brave Bird from Moltres? However, what I do know is the only Brave Bird that's getting reached is the one on Pidgeot, and Pidgeot is going to Brave Bird Moltres, show who's the superior flyer, and take that game. Heading into the next battle, we see Skeledirge in the lead position, definitely two better response than the back, so we say switch into Swampert, baiting out Feraligatr. Swampert isn't the best into Feraligatr, but we do have an energy lead, meaning we are going to outpace the back-to-back sludges. The opponent tries to play 2 CMP, but I recognise as they're not a Shadow, we're not in danger of getting knocked out, as Hydro Cannon simply doesn't cut it. Swampert fires off the next Sludge, forced to protection. The opponent looks for that Shadow Claw farm down, Swampert says no, reaches the next Sludge, and the opponent's either going to lose switch or be forced to burn both Protect Shields here in the mid-game matchup. I'm going to send back out Pidgeot because this gust damage is very oppressive. Even if the opponent full sends an Ice Beam, one very easily survivable. Well, not easily, but it wouldn't knock out. The opponent actually go for back-to-back Hydro Cannons. I'm going to shield the next one, recognising we can just Brave Bird whatever's in the back, or potentially that Skeledirge. Back out comes Skeledirge. I'm going to bank the Brave Bird, make the pivot into Wish Daddy Cash. The opponent stays in. This is likely the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball does rock me, and out comes Pangoro. How do I win this game? I think I'm kind of obliged to shield this, and I can't dump my energy on this Pangoro that I've got on Pidgeot. So I'm going to shield up the Night Slash. The opponent has no shields. We full send the Blizzard. Blizzard does massive damage. The opponent needs to Karate Chop farm down. They don't get it. Instead, we Mud Shot farm them down. Skeledirge re-enters the arena. We throw one Gust and the Brave Bird. And have no doubt, Brave Bird is going to be all she wrote. GG's that opponent. Heading into the next battle. Holy cow, that is an atrocious lead. But 2 decent answers in the back. We say switch into Swampert, baiting out Moltres. This, unfortunately, a matchup that Swampert won't be winning. Because in the 2-shield scenario, you just get fully Sucker Punch farm down, which is super depressing. However, if I'm going to have any chance of winning this game, we do need to force some shields down. So I'm happy to invest at least one Protect Shield and look to force one back off the opponent. Of course, when your opponent has such a commanding lead like Sonic the Hedgehog into the Boom Bird, you know they're going to fight for Switch. We do successfully force a Protect Shield here in the mid-game matchup. I'm really hoping that I can Gust farm down before the Brave Birds are reached. Unfortunately, I can't. The opponent survives on fractional HP. Pidgeot gets one-shot vanquished back to its Pokeball. We send out Wish Daddy Cash. The opponent not conceding a farm down. Send out Combo. There's one win con. Does the opponent respect the damage? Yes, they do. This game's over, and I run for the hills. GG's to that opponent. Heading into the next battle, things are looking up. We see a fantastic lead, and one of Whiscash's targets have been acquired. Finally, we get the alignment we're looking for with Whiscash. It's not going to beat much, but it should at least beat a poison type. Weezing is so bloody spammy though, only taking 4 fairy wins to each of these brutal swings. And these brutal swings, despite not getting stabbed, are starting to add up. We fire off the Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb isn't actually lethal. We're not in brutal swing range. This probably works out better as we're going to leave minimal farm for whatever comes out. The opponent thinking about what to send out. Send out Cradilly. Interested in running Bullet Seed. If they're on Acid, I think it would have made a Blizzard, but it's not meant to be. We fire off the Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb does absolutely nothing, and I'm forced to send out Pidgeot. As they're on Bullet Seed as opposed to Acid, whilst this Rock Tomb will hit hard, they are never ever farming me down, so I'm willing to tank the move and make the opponent make the first shielding decision of the game. Here we do go with the correct timing, 2 Gust and the Feather Dance. Feather Dance forces the Protect Shield. We're just going to match shield. They shield, I shield. And again, we're going to go for 2 and the next Feather Dance. These Gusts are starting to do a number on Cradilly. Potentially this Feather Dance, despite being a trash move for damage output, should pick up the knockout. The opponent invests the final Protect Shield. At this point, we're putting it all on Swampert. Whilst we are double weak to Grass, the opponent likely instantly pivot out, looking to reset their debuff. They do exactly that, and back out comes Dust Noir. Cradilly is energy dry, so Swampert will always outpace, so I'm going to invest a Protect Shield, blocking up the Shadow Punch, but then going to throw one Mud Shot and the Hydro Cannon for optimal fast move timing. Unfortunately, Hydro Cannon doesn't quite cut it, so I'm forced to throw another. We maximise our farm, throwing on CMP. Hydro Cannon will be removing Dust Noir from the field of play. When Cradilly does return, they're going to look for the Bullet Seed farm down. Swampert says no, reaches one further Hydro Cannon, and takes that game. GG's to that opponent. Heading into the next battle, this time we see Glaring Weezing in the lead position. I'm going to throw 2 Gust, wait 2 turns, and look to catch a Sludge onto Swampert. The catch attempt is successful, which is nice for me as Sludge doesn't do much of anything. We also bank some energy on our lead. The opponent enters the mirror. Thankfully, we're able to win charge attack priority. Hydro Cannon forces the Protect Shield. There's no real point in matching shields, as one single Hydro Cannon won't knock them out. As you can see, even after taking the Sludge, we were still able to survive the Hydro Cannon, not well, but just about. We send back out Pidgeot. The opponent throws on alignment, giving me a free Gust. As I snuck a free Gust here, I think I should just throw 2 and the Feather Dance, as Feather Dance would be lethal. I wasn't sure at the time of playing, but when I see it back, that is definitely Feather Dance range. So Brave Bird in there is massive overkill and turns out to be a huge mistake, as out comes Cradilly. Again, this Cradilly is on Bullet Seed. We saw in the previous battle, we can survive a Rock Tomb, not well, but one is survivable. As I've harshed out my own defense, I'm forced to invest in protection and hope the opponent looks to call the bait. Brave Bird forces the final protection here. We wait 3 turns, try to make the second Savage catch of the battle. The opponent not going to be tricked twice, not falling for any of my shenanigans. Forcing the Grass Knot, Whiscash straight in and straight out. Pidgeot very quickly, about to meet the same fate, and this one does end in defeat. GG's to that opponent. Heading into the next battle, holy spice man, Zoroark, you love to see it. And what also you love to see, I thought my opponent was going to be a Spice Lord, but they're running one spicy Pokemon with some basic bitch meta in the back. And this basic bitch meta is about to be punished by its worst nightmare, Shadow Wish Daddy Cash. Even though the opponent was able to buff up their own defense, before he was able to get off a Mud Bomb, you can see Mud Bomb still 2 shots. My opponent actually looks to make a play at taking back Switch. And do you know what, trainer? You enjoy yourself. You can have it, because that looks like massive farm down opportunity for our second Mud Boy in the form of Shadow Swampert. Zoroark is a complete glass cannon with a monstrous attack stat, meaning they're going to have no defense and they aren't going to fancy tanking a charge move. The opponent not wishing to concede yet more farm, send back out Zoroark. Hydro Cannon forces the opponent's final protection, will then make the pivot into Pidgeot. And despite them having a monstrous attack stat, they're forced to go for non-stab foul plays, as the Shadow Ball would be double resisted. The gust damage out here looking like it's super effective. The opponent recognised down 2 protect shields. They're probably fucked and they concede the match. In the next battle, we see Primeape in the lead position. The opponent safe switches into Skeledirge and I send out Swampert. I was tempted to go Whiscash, but I think I'll be pretty disappointed with how pitiful the Mud Bomb damage output was. The opponent go for the Torch Song bait, but let me tell you, Mr. Opponent, no bait will ever save your fate in this matchup. This is a win for Swampert in any shielding scenario. My opponent fighting super hard for switch, which leads me to believe they've got a hard Pidgeot answer in the back, so I'm going to match protect shield. The opponent then aggressively give up switch, send back out Primeape. Primeape greeted with the Hydro Cannon. We pivot into Pidgeot, and if you've got close combat trainer, you enjoy yourself. As the opponent was fighting so hard for switch until they aggressively give it up, I'm led to believe it's probably something like Bellibolt in the back. Or perhaps not, as back out comes Skeledirge, but Skeledirge straight in and straight out, and it's actually a Gator, and this game's now got complicated. An Energy Lead Shadow Gator isn't something you want to see with no shields and 2 glassy Shadow Mud Boys. We send out Whiscash, Whiscash gonna get clapped with a Hydro Cannon. And I think my best path forward is looking to catch the next Hydro Cannon onto Swampert and forcing the opponent to try and go for a perfect undercharge. My opponent does try for the undercharge, but it looks like they're having it enough bobbles. Swampert looks to reach the Sludge, able to get there, and Sludge is going to be all she wrote. GG's, and thanks for playing. Heading into the next battle, we see Big Man Blastoise in the lead position. We're going to safe switch into Swampert. The opponent throws some rollouts and then sends out Weezing. You can see here, we attempted to throw the Sludge, but unfortunately, it didn't get it off. Oh, this is bad, man. This is really, really bad. However, the good thing about the Shadow variant of Swampert, unlike the regular, you are able to 2-shot for Weezing. Let's see if the opponent wants to fight for switch. We throw the next Sludge, winning CMP, and do force our Protect Shield back. On the plus side for me, the fewer shields in play, the more likely we are to land a Brave Bird, which is probably the only way I've got really of getting rid of Blastoise, as Blastoise, even in Shadow form, is really bulky and Mud Bombs wouldn't do much. Back out comes Blastoise. Blastoise gonna fire off the Hydro Cannon. They didn't farm to the Ice Beams, that can only be a Hydro Cannon. Pidgeot throws 2 Gust and the Brave Bird. The question is, does the opponent respect the damage? They do not. Big Man Blastoise gets removed from the field of play. And are you fucking kidding me? What is this team? The idea of my team is to bait out the Grass type, giving Whiscash the best chance to do anything in the back. However, they've got not 1 Grass type, but 2. And believe it or not, double Grass will beat double Mud Boy. We get absolutely clapped, and we're moving into the next battle. We see Golurk in the lead, a very, very nice lead for me. The opponent safe switches into Drapion, and finally Daddy Cash claims another victim. Well, at least finds a target, we'll say that, as this matchup's actually far closer than you'd hope. As of the regular variant of Drapion, it looks like we do survive 2 crunches, but if they were Shadow and Shadow Crime, I think 2 crunches would actually knock us out. I'm hoping after tanking this next crunch, we can Mudshot farm down in 4, but it doesn't look possible, so I'm forced to throw this Mud Bomb before they throw the Aqua Tail and force a Protect Shield here in the mid-game matchup, which Daddy Cash does shore up that mid-game matchup, winning the 0 shield scenario, which you kind of expect from a Mud Boy into a Poison type. We send back out Pidgeot, the opponent going to throw the Dynamic Punch, which does do a lot, but the Mud Slaps are double resisted and not doing much of anything. The opponent then pivots out into Licky, far too thicky. We throw the debuffing move because we're horny for the debuff and send out Swampert. The opponent doesn't farm up 2 potential Solar Beams. Whatever they throw is going to do absolutely nothing. They throw the Body Slam. I think that actually healed Swampert. The opponent doesn't want the smoke and they concede the match. In the next battle, we see Tapu Fini in the lead position. I said in my last upload, I haven't seen one of these things in forever, but here we've seen it back-to-back days. The opponent fire off the Surf, we bank our energy and send out Swampert. Our Swampert safe switch is answered by Giratina. This isn't actually the worst matchup if I'm being honest. The Mud Shots plus Hydro Cannon spam does start to add up over time. If we had Earthquake, like in the good old days, a Shadow Earthquake does crazy damage. Well, at least it did before it was nerfed. Earthquake isn't what it once was. Swampert has been nerfed 3 times. Hydro Cannon was nerfed in the very, very early seasons. I believe it was the first ever move to get reworked. Earthquake, of course, does less damage, and Mudshot now generates less energy. RIP, my good buddy Swampert. You were once the GOAT. However, nowadays, not as good as you once were. We send out Wish Daddy Cash. Wish Daddy Cash commits to the Mudshot farm down. Back out comes Tapu Fini. Tapu Fini going to be greeted with the Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb goes unshielded. I think here, I'm going to shield up the Surf or whatever they throw, potentially a Nature's Madness, then make the pivot back into Pidgeot, as they're going to be forced to pivot or they'll get Gust farmed down. Out comes Drapion, who's going to YOLO a Brave Bird with 2 shields, hoping to sneak it through the Protect shield. Unfortunately, the opponent does shield it up, but here they make a huge mistake. They could have Poison Stung farmed me down. They didn't do that, potentially giving me a fighting chance. Daddy Cash tasked with a 1v2. We waste no time, fire off the Mud Bomb. Mud Bomb forces the opponent's final Protect shield, and they make another mistake. Trainer, you're 1 short of the crunch. We know Shield the Aquatail, recognising these poison things aren't going to do much of anything. As soon as he Tapu Fini enter the field of play, it's going to be straight in and straight out, minimising the water gun damage. The opponent's win con is the poison thing farmed down. Whiscash says no, reach the next Mud Bomb, and that is all she wrote. GG's, and thanks for playing. Whiscash putting in work, but in reality, I think the opponent played that really poorly. But we're not complaining. In the next battle, we see Clefable in the lead position. We try our luck making a catch onto Swampert. Catch attempt unsuccessful. The opponent fire off the Swift and then try and catch a Sludge. However, I was never going to throw a Sludge. I was always going to throw Hydro Cannon, anticipating the opponent trying to make a catch. If I would have thrown a Sludge at Zygarde, I think I would have not only top left the battle, probably uninstalled the game. I would have cried myself to sleep. Thankfully, able to land 3 Hydro Cannons. It's pretty absurd. The Hydro Cannons are hit for neutral. 3 don't even knock out this bulky beast. However, despite not being able to flip switch advantage, that isn't bad for me as it sets up Pidgeot to get a massive Gust farm down. Clefable re-enters the arena, and here it's pretty sad that I win CMP. I'd much rather they threw first before I harshly load my own defense. This is probably another Swift, but I'm going to invest the Protect shield. Of course it's the Swift, but at -3 that would have still hurt. We then make the pivot into Daddy Cash. Is the opponent finally going to throw a Moonblast? Of course they are, and ouch, that hurt. We get rocked. Out comes Moltres, and you better believe we're full sending. The question is, does the opponent respect the damage? Bang! Not quite bang, but the opponent left on fractional HP. The opponent opted to dump energy, worried they'll get Mudshot farm down. Before they Sucker Punch farm me down, Pidgeot hits the field of play, able to Gust farm down Moltres. Back out comes Clefable, and we're going to fire off the very annoying debuff. The opponent then throws on alignment, and that is the final nail in this opponent's coffin. They go for 1 further Swift bait, but no bait. We'll be saving this Clefable's fate. We reach 1 further Feather Dance and take that game. GG's to that opponent. Heading into the next battle. Holy smokes, the Dream Lead, Shadow Toxicroak. Things you love to see. Shadow Toxicroak is one of my favourite Pokemon. Then save switch into Galarian Weezing, and here comes Daddy Cash. I did get off some Gust damage, so I'm hoping now we only have to fire off 1 single Mud Bomb to remove them from the field of play. This opponent has Play Rough, and that Play Rough did a lot of damage, but we are able to knock them out just throwing 1 singular Mud Bomb. We have still maintained alignment, and it's even quite difficult for the opponent to send back out Toxicroak, as the Mud Shots and Mud Bomb combination would do a lot. The opponent reveals their third, out comes Lapras. That Mud Bomb didn't do much of anything, but the opponent opts to dump energy rather than looking for the farm down. This works out perfectly for me. I'm just going to send out Swampert into Lapras. Is it a good matchup? No, it's not, but Pidgeot is my win con. I think I might actually go straight Hydro Cannon here, anticipating the opponent trying to make a catch. I'm at least going to build up to fake an Earthquake before I throw anything. Right on cue, there is the catch attempt. We're going to fire off the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon does massive damage. We attempt to snipe with a Gust, but 1 Gust isn't quite lethal. We are going to shield up the incoming Dynamic Punch, and as the opponent's only got 1 Pokemon remaining, you better believe it's going to get debuffed into oblivion. Feather Dance not only double debuffs their attack, but also force a Protect shield. I'm going to shield this up, and I'm even hornier for yet another debuff. The opponent full send the Ice Beam. Pidgeot correctly shield it up, fires off yet another Feather Dance. The opponent shield yet another Feather Dance. We're then going to pivot into Swampert, give the opponent the cheeky wham bam combo play, give them the Big Mac and the fries they didn't order, and take that game. Heading into the next battle, we see Shadow and Shadow Chrome with Pidgeot into Feraligatr. Even if the opponent doesn't build up to the Ice Beam, I am going to shield the first move, as we want to keep Pidgeot nice and healthy for any potential grass type. The opponent does go straight Hydro Cannon, but I'm more than happy to shield. I'm then going to return fire with the Feather Dance. I don't really care if they shield or not, as I'm looking to pivot. A shield's nice, because then the energy will be debuffed. We're going to tank the debuff move, and then look to catch out of this matchup. Even double debuff, that Hydro Cannon still does crazy damage. Pidgeot really doesn't have the bulk in Ultra League. I'm not entirely sure why I went to Whiscash in this battle, as we have been using Swampert as the safe switch, and out comes Primate. The opponent is going to have to full send their close combat to pick up the one shot. They do exactly that, Whiscash straight in and straight out. I'm hoping I can gust down in 2, although you can see the first gust doesn't quite do half the health, so instead I'm just going to fire off the Feather Dance and look to remove Primate from the field of play. Down goes Primate. It's highly unlikely that Feraligatr returns. The opponent was likely to reveal their third. Out comes Galarian Weezing. We see the pivot into Swampert. The opponent tries to make a catch attempt unsuccessful. The opponent recognises it's going to be death by Hydro Cannon. They don't want that work, and they concede the match. And that is just about going to wrap things up for today's video. Would I recommend building a Whiscash for the Ultra League? If I'm being brutally honest, no, I would not. Of course, my channels are more for your entertainment purpose only. It's very reliant on getting the correct alignment, as in type neutral matchups, it just doesn't have the stat product to play with some of the big hitters. However, with that being said, if you enjoy my content, consider leaving a like. If you're new, consider subscribing if you'd like your battles featured on my channel. A link to my battle submission form is down below, and as always, a huge thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.